Welcome to today's episode of Selling the Cloud podcast. Today we are honored to be joined by Lindsey Meyl, co-founder of RevAmp, a revenue operations platform. Today we'll be covering three main areas: the importance of having a data strategy, observability in the world of RevOps, and if you want a competitive advantage, how companies are leveraging AI for just that. Lindsey, can you share a little bit about your background and your life journey to leading up to being a guest with us on Selling the Cloud?
Yes, and first, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to share about this exciting space. And I have to say, I landed in revenue operations in at a time when it was probably better known as sales operations, and it's since evolved to cover marketing and customer success. I have been in go-to-market for over 20 years now, with the last decade in revenue operations. But I have to say, I actually feel like the last couple of years have really been the most transformational that I've personally experienced. And I think a lot of the reason why so many of us are excited about the possibilities of our space and how we can really command more efficient revenue for our organizations.
Well, Lindsay, welcome. So happy to have you here. So most of the companies we talk to don't say things like, hey, we don't have enough data, or hey, we need more reports, or hey, we need more dashboards. Instead, what we typically hear is, I can't get the information that I need. I have too much information. It's not actionable. I'm not getting any insights on what to do next. So maybe you can start us off kind of with the fundamentals and talk to us about the importance of having a data strategy.
Yes, yes, and I think a lot of us can empathize with that experience, both on the go-to-market executive side as well as the revenue operations side, where we're really the ones responsible for making that data and those insights actionable. And I think when we think about the evolution of the space and how we've arrived where we are today, a lot of the insights that we have provided to the business were derived predominantly off of a process first type of strategy. So this entailed building out a CRM with specifically defined processes that then created uh, the data collection trigger that you could then analyze the business. A perfect example is everybody wants to know how much pipe they've generated over a specific time period. You would define a process around what is the definition of pipeline. And then you would have to build out the system to, in the context of that process, to collect the data when those parameters were met. The challenge with this approach is it's not very flexible, because if you don't agree with the process, or you're finding an area that can be better understood, or more than anything, it can't answer the why of did you meet the pipe generation number or not, and why did it have the result that it did. In order to get to the why, you have to go back to the process design and collect different type of information. So it's slow, it's very linear, and it really doesn't allow us to address problems in the go-to-market at the rate all of us want to do. And when I think about this transformation, it's very similar in many ways to what engineering teams faced. If you're familiar with engineering concepts, a lot of engineering and software was built off of what was originally waterfall concepts, which is you create a linear approach to the software build, and it's rigid, it's formulaic, and quite frankly, pretty slow. About 15 years ago, the concept of agile was introduced to software building. This is all about speed and collaboration and flexibility more than anything. And I think that is where we are right now when it comes to being able to understand the business and draw in better insights for what to do and if we're doing it well. And that's where more of a signal-based approach to analysis allows us to move away from the slow and rigid process of collecting data off of predefined processes, and instead being able to leverage the flexibility of signals at the time that they're happening in the context of the business outcome that we want. So it's very similar to that type of transformation. I think it's a lot of this change is going to come down to the comfort of recognizing that a data signal is the key to these insights, as opposed to a process first design.
That is, you took us in a bunch of great directions there, and I love how you equate the RevOps function to engineering processes, which I really believe I have very similar to belief, and that's why the concept of RevOps is really moving to a pure science approach, and it's allowing us to look in more ways at the sales function in a scientific type of approach as well. So that does move the needle significantly. Lindsey, can you give us an example or two about how data and having a flow of data has improved the general cross-functional alignment between marketing and sales? And weave into that, if you could as well, a little bit of how sales ops has evolved into RevOps with that additional cross-functional alignment that is now achievable.
Well, and I think, again, this comes back to the transformation of our space, because I think, look, I built my career off of initially sales ops. I think a lot of the way we grew revenue came from full cycle AE selling behavior. But that's not the way our customers are buying anymore. I think the B2C space has really transformed a lot of buying behavior in the sense that our customers are doing research. They're influenced by other people that they know and that they trust. They look for recommendations in ways that, quite frankly, our companies and particularly our AEs are not able to control, nor should they be expected to. And I think this is a big part of why, when we think about effective, efficient, sustainable revenue growth organizations, this comes down to all the functional areas that impact a customer. So we're talking about marketing, sales, customer success, and product. And that is actually the new type of way we need to be thinking about revenue organizations. It's no longer giving an AE a bag and a quota and saying, this is how I'm hitting my number. This really is about a coordinated, intelligent approach to how you are guiding your customers through revenue growth. And I think what has me particularly excited about this is I think everybody wins on the other side too, because the customers get a far more authentic and beneficial experience. And each of these functional areas can understand and play a critical part of that revenue growth. It's no longer finger pointing as to what team is contributing and which one isn't. This is actually about the coordination and the teamwork of a centralized go-to-market organization. So I'm really excited about the place that we're at, and I think it's really creating a whole new environment with what go-to-market means in the B2B space.
Yeah. I love that because it kind of dives well into the next question that we have. So you're talking about all these different cross-functional teams accessing data to make more informed decisions, looking for those signals. So maybe you can help our audience understand what kind of data should they be looking at? Where might this data live that's a little different from the way we did things in the past? And touch on back to the point of all companies have a lot of data. The question is, how are they harnessing it and which data are they using?
Well, and I think, yes, this really comes down to there needs to be, so to really develop a data strategy that gives you a competitive advantage, you need to understand where your data is living and what you have available to us. I think a lot of people feel like they have a lot of data, but they can't make sense of any of it, partially because we are very dependent on integrations into a CRM, which honestly ends up dulling what those signals actually mean, because we have to make it a clean integration space, as opposed to going to the direct source of the data. And what I mean by this is when we start thinking about where these signals are living, just think about the emergence of new go-to-market motions. So ecosystem plays, community motions, being able to leverage inbound and outbound in the context of what emails were sent, who's on your website right now. These aren't signals that are happening in their CRM. There's an original source that automatically collects those signals. And then that gives you the flexibility to just start understanding that what all of those pieces, what all of these patterns actually mean in the context of very specific use cases that drive revenue for your organization. So it takes us back to before. We used to only collect data in the context and be able to analyze it by saying, when someone follows this sales process, this tells me how likely I am to hit a forecast number. When instead we start being able to leverage signals that no longer are forcing into a specific linear process, and now actually able to inform not just how likely are they to buy, but are they are they the right customer for your solution? If they are the right customer for the solution, what type of solution is best equipped based on the behavior and the signals that you're able to collect that's going to give them the most value? What is the journey? What is the action that you can put in front of them that is going to have the biggest impact based on what you know? So it really starts creating this environment that then this type of information can be activated through your marketing channels, through your direct sales channels, through your product channels. It really creates that type of coordination, flexibility, and complete picture that we were not looking at in this way previously.
So if I was just to think about it more specifically, like if you have usage data from your product and you start seeing certain buying signals through that usage data, you could take that information and help your sales reps prioritize which accounts to go for expansion, or what might be signaling that a customer is ready to buy an additional module. Is that kind of what you're?
Yes, and I'd say it can go even deeper than that. So I think the maturity curve of this is kind of similar to how we think about scoring. We've done a lot of scoring within lead frameworks. I think there's a lot of exciting things coming from companies like Pocus. That's a product-led growth CRM that does that type of scoring with usage data. It is very important to help the prioritization and understanding of how this other activity, say in your product, could inform expansion opportunities for your sales team to act on. The challenge with scoring is it does group everything together into a single view. It basically just says, this is the priority list. It doesn't necessarily take it a step further of how can you create the personalization? How can you create this as a custom experience that is in the context of what you already know about this customer? How can you then make more strategic decisions around perhaps certain types of pricing and packaging that now is offered just to that type of customer, again, based on the activity that you know, or ideal customer profile signals that then tell you there could be a different type of territory strategy that you need. So when we start thinking about things like usage-based data, I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg when we say there is we can prioritize lists and activate our sales team based on expansion opportunities. Things like usage-based data can actually start informing all other types of critical go-to-market strategies that was honestly just too nuanced, and people really can't identify these types of signals now with AI and particularly machine learning. You can actually take these models and make sense of all of these various signals to create this recommendation engine.
That's incredible, and it does really correlate into the next step of our discussion here, that we'd like to go deeper into AI. But before we do, many members of our audience know that I have spent a little over 10 years working very closely with private equity companies and private equity owned companies in the SaaS space. And what I've loved about that that journey and how that market just has grown and evolved is how there is this language of metrics now. And any company that's acquiring another company or working together in multiple ways can evaluate the other organization around these key metric points. However, I still see that they lean much more on the financial end and not really into the revenue operations, the sales side. Although I know individuals like you and Kat, also here with us, have been taking it to so many different levels. So, what are the metrics, the indicators, the signals, as you describe them, that you prioritize to really measure an improving rather than a deteriorating sales organization?
Yes, I love that question because the truth is these data signals really need to have certain guardrails so that they are pointed in the right direction of what does success look like. So when I'm working with an organization, and honestly, this is a day one priority, which is let's identify the core milestones that you want to hit that indicate the intended progress across the customer journey. So coming from a sales operations perspective, we often did this with a sales process, but the concept of revenue operations is actually bringing the entirety of your go-to-market organization together. So it's bringing that same concept of sales process rigor to the entirety of your go-to-market. What does good look like to guide your customer through revenue growth opportunities? So this could be defining an awareness stage, a buying readiness stage, a selection stage, really working a customer through the entirety of what their buying experience or what their customer experience could look like. From a KPI perspective, once you have this framework in place, and I know Katerina and I feel very bullish on particularly winning by design's data model. I like to call it bow tie model. This is a phenomenal way to really think about that framework and starting to hone in on the key KPIs of what does good look like in your business. And where these KPIs are valuable is once you have these milestones defined, you can take volume, velocity, and conversion within each of these milestones and very easily start pinpointing this is working, this is not. And it's a phenomenal way to bring in what is our leading indicators to your business so that once you have this type of visibility, you can do something about it. It's no longer a forecast number or exactly to your point, Mark. The toughest things about financial numbers is they're lagging indicators. They've happened. There's nothing you can do about it at that point. Where what I love about the bow tie model is it brings in those leading indicators that give you the power and give you the insights to take action that actually influences the end result of the revenue target.
That's great. If I go down this path, we won't stop talking about the bow tie model. I do want to shift course just a little bit because it's a hot topic these days. But Lindsey, I think all of us are using some form of generative AI in our day to day. But I think that we should show a difference between AI as a productivity tool and the application of AI within the go-to-market as a competitive advantage, because I think that there's significant differences and there's applications obviously on both ends, but maybe you can talk to the competitive advantage side and how like the most advanced go-to-market companies are doing this.
Yeah. Katerina, thank you for that question because look, we're all excited about generative AI. It's showing some pretty cool things, but I think it's easy to forget that generative AI doesn't necessarily give you that type of competitive advantage, that edge that, quite frankly, AI can give you. And I think because let's think about what generative AI is. It produces it generates email copy or content playbooks, basically allows you to work faster and sometimes produce something better than if you did it yourself. But the problem with generative AI and just focusing your strategy on generating things is if it's not based on the foundation of a strong strategy or strong prompts behind what it's generating, it's not competitive. In fact, if you're just relying on what everyone else is doing through these other models, you're really not doing anything different than anybody else. So the real advantage of AI comes down to your data asset. AI is only as good as the data we feed it. And if you want to be doing something more than the status quo, you need to have a data asset that is going to allow AI to perform at a better in a better way than what the large language models are doing for everybody else. And I think, and this is a core difference, I think we could go down the path of like predictive AI versus generative AI. But at the end of the day, I think my recommendation would be, and to your point, Katerina, is this comes down to prioritizing your data strategy if you actually want to implement an AI strategy. And when we talk about data strategy, actually, we might want to put this in the show notes because Greg Meyer produced a great data maturity framework on LinkedIn this past week that I think is a really great place for people to think about resources and prioritization of their data strategy. But we also don't have to overthink this because this really just comes down to being able to know what data you have. Take the time to go through the systems, what is collected, what is not. My recommendation on this, and we all have different offerings in this area, but I like to organize my data asset around 4 core categories. The reason I focus on these categories is because it's much easier to organize the data in the context of where the data sources are that's providing this data, and then start organizing in a way that you can then leverage it for specific use cases that you want to activate to improve performance and ideally leverage AI models to help with the recommendations. The 4 data categories are fit data, behavioral data, usage data, which we talked a little bit about, and then of course outcome data, which tends to be more the financial metrics that we talked about, as well as what I would deem as process driven data collection events. We offer a template that helps as a checklist for people. If you use Gong, this is likely the data collection that you can leverage in Gong that goes far beyond what you can integrate into your CRM, but actually this is the data available simply by investing in this tool. And it goes across your entire go-to-market tech stack and starts allowing you to run that type of audit and organize the data. Once you have this data organized, that's the strategy right there. And my recommendation is making sure that the data living across your tech stack, ideally, you can push that into a data warehouse so it's better organized and more functional there. But the truth is, I can speak from my own personal experience. I've worked for a lot of organizations where setting up and maintaining a data warehouse just wasn't in the cards. So you can certainly get started with simply just a Google sheet and a checklist of what your data dictionary and what data assets you can leverage to start feeding into these models.